It has recently been revealed by UFC President Dana White what Colby Covington needs to do in order to earn a title shot against Isreal Adesanya. Let's get into this and other UFC news that's been making rounds. So what does Covington need to do in order to fight Adesanya? Colby Covington took reigning king Kamaru Usman to the limit on both occasions in his two attempts at winning the UFC welterweight championship. He still came up short, with his most notable accolade to date being when he captured the interim belt way back at UFC 225, despite all of his good work. There's no guarantee that he's going to get a third shot at Usman, even if he beats Jorge Masvidal in the main event of UFC 272 this weekend, especially with the likes of Khamzat Chimaev standing ahead of him in the queue, as well as Leon Edwards and Gilbert Burns. Covington has recently hinted at a move up to middleweight to take on Israel Adesanya, and Dana White doesn't necessarily hate that fight, but the UFC president isn't too keen on the idea because the controversial welterweight would need to beat a top 185-pound contender before being considered a fighter such as Jared Cannonier or Robert Whittaker. In their own right, and even if Covington likes his chances against either of them, Cannonier and Whittaker are both decent-sized middleweights. He is currently being tipped to fight Adesanya later this year. However, he'll have to wait and see how the division plays out with Cannonier. Colby needs to put the focus on finally putting an end to his feud with Masvidal for now. After vanquishing his biggest rival Robert Whittaker at UFC 271, Adesanya has asserted his dominance over the 185-pound weight class. With his spectacular come-from-behind win against Eric Brunson, Jared Cannonier seemingly secured the next title opportunity on the same card. Whittaker believes their rivalry isn't over. All of this hints towards Covington being sidelined. Next, Covington likes his chances against Adesanya. One of the most anticipated non-title fights in recent memory will be headlined by Colby Covington against Jorge Masvidal this weekend. Even a convincing win for Covington won't be enough to earn him a third welterweight title shot, as stated by UFC President Dana White. In a recent interview with Yahoo Sports, Covington said he isn't opposed to going up to 185 pounds to beat Adesanya because he doesn't believe the champ is a well-rounded fighter. He believes that he can take him down and that he doesn't match his pace. Moreover, Covington thinks he has a lot of options even if he doesn't get his third fight with Usman. Up next, Dana White laughs off the notion. Covington moving up to take on Adesanya for the UFC middleweight championship is an idea Dana White has shut down. There are few pound-for-pound fighters better than Adesanya in all of mixed martial arts at this moment in time. Many are wondering whether or not it'll soon be time to move up in weight and officially join the 205-pound division after his fight with Jared Cannonier. However, the option of turning back challenger after challenger is left. Probably this is the reason why it's not quite clear as to what the future holds for him and why he's flirting with the idea of jumping up to 185 pounds to test his luck against Israel Adesanya. Given his ambition, it could make a lot of sense for him to pursue something new, even though the welterweight standout has had his fair share of highs at 170. Dana White made it clear during a recent interview with Yahoo Sports that he doesn't think Covington qualifies for an immediate shot at Adesanya. He doesn't see how Covington can jump from losing to Usman twice to fighting Adesanya, who's a world champ. White thinks Covington shouldn't be able to jump up a weight class just to take on a champion when Covington didn't beat the champion twice in his own weight class. The interviewer suggested that he should probably get a shot at it if he wins a fight at middleweight first, and White agreed. What is Covington's plan? He's gearing up for a grudge match main event against Jorge Masvidal at UFC 272 this weekend, so the increased talk surrounding Colby Covington has increased. They'll finally be able to settle the score since the two have gone from good friends to bitter rivals in recent years. When it comes to his middleweight plans, however, it doesn't really matter if he wins or loses. Covington is the favorite due to his dominant wrestling style, and a win may give him hope of taking on Kamaru Usman for a third time. He may instead opt to head up to middleweight with some momentum as opposed to a third fight against Usman. Now in other UFC news, Logan talks about his little brother's beef with the UFC president. When asked about his brother's success on the MMA Hour, Logan Paul said that he gets so inspired by his little brother. He put in work to bring about the results he has. The younger Paul brothers grabbing headlines for his ongoing feud with UFC president Dana White, but he has not just made a name for himself on the back of his pugilistic success. Logan reiterated that he's immensely proud of his little brother for speaking his mind, and not just because he isn't White's employee, but because he's never afraid to speak his mind. Over the past several months, Jake Paul has poked at White for over a year, trying to get White to allow some of his fighters to box Paul. He's been attacking White over issues of fighter pay and healthcare, and even putting out a diss track with the extremely subtle hook. Ultimately, Logan believes for the sport as a whole, this is going to pay dividends. Though he does not have his next fight scheduled currently, Jake Paul remains of going concern in the combat sports world. A list of possible opponents has emerged with former UFC middleweight champion Anderson Silva as one of the top possibilities that Logan says he'd most like to see his brother fight next. He wants to see his younger brother eventually fighting Diaz and McGregor. Rumor has it that once his deal is up, he intends to pursue a boxing match against Jake Paul, and Diaz is on the final fight of his UFC deal. Next, Atlas lauds Covington in Covington versus Masvidal. Covington dominated Masvidal at UFC 272's main event on Saturday night. Covington scored scored 6 takedowns and over 16 minutes of control time using a wrestling-heavy game plan, winning in a unanimous decision, and it was his wrestling that has been credited for the win. Teddy Atlas, a member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame and one of the most famous boxing trainers of all time, gave Covington a lot of high praise for his striking form. On Saturday evening, Atlas credited Covington's striking skills as being the difference in the UFC 272 main event while discussing the fight. Covington held his own and even won. That was the biggest difference because that took some of the mental part away. His wrestling and grappling were the most dominating parts of the fight for Covington. The former UFC interim welterweight champion found success on the feet even when he managed to hurt Masvidal, and it was proof to Atlas and the public that his skills were underrated. UFC President Dana White spoke about Covington's success on the feet against Masvidal after the bout that not everyone underrated Covington's striking skills. White said in the post-fight press conference that Covington's style makes you worry about the takedown. Lastly, Dos Anjos cruises to victory against Moicano. On Saturday night, Rafael Dos Anjos, who was originally scheduled to face Rafael Fiziev, drew Moicano on just 5 days' notice, but apparently he decided to take out his frustrations on his late-notice replacement. As he opened several cuts on Moicano and left him covered in blood and bruises when the fight came to an end, Dos Anjos was relentless with his ground attacks. Since returning to the lightweight division, Dos Anjos secured the win for a second straight victory. This past Tuesday, Moicano was looking to get out to a fast start as he was on the attack early, and Dos Anjos resisted by turning to his grappling to slow the action down. The former lightweight champion was punishing on top as he set up punches and elbows with Moicano stuck underneath him once Dos Anjos snatched a takedown near the cage. Dos Anjos turned to his striking to then batter Moicano on the feet following a dominant start to the fight, and he was dishing out some powerful punches in the exchanges. He still came out firing with one last surge in an attempt to pull off possibly the craziest comeback in MMA history, despite every indication looking like Moicano shouldn't be allowed to continue. Dos Anjos cruised to victory after 5 grueling rounds, even though Moicano did manage to connect with a few strikes in the final exchange, but it was obviously a little too late. And that's all for now, folks, but we'll be back with more interesting videos. To stay informed about the sports industry, keep watching our videos. Tell us if you think Covington should be allowed to fight Adesanya next by sounding off in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe before leaving. Signing off.